Hey guys, I just wanted to share another game that I played recently. In this one, I played the King's Gambit. The King's Gambit is another excellent opening, and the reason for that is that it's an opening where you push the F pawn. That's right, that's a common characteristic of all of the best openings. It's pushing the F pawn. So open with e4, e5, and then the characteristic move of the King's Gambit is, of course, f4. My opponent responded with, well, basically declining the gambit, protecting this pawn to prevent it from being captured. In this move, in this position, you can develop your knight as usual in the lines where it's accepted, but I actually don't like to do that. And the reason for that is that um, if somebody hasn't seen the King's Gambit for a while, they may remember it incorrectly. So a typical thing that can happen in the King's Gambit is that after black accepts the gambit, if white doesn't bring out the bishop, the queen can come here and check. So there's two ways to deal with this traditionally in the King's Gambit. One is the knight version of the King's Gambit, which is in which when black accepts the gambit, you bring out the knight to cover the square. The other version is the bishop variation, which is the one that Bobby Fischer liked to play, which is after black accepts the piece, you bring out your bishop, and when the king comes down, a queen comes down, you put your king here. It looks super dubious, but actually the consensus opinion is that it's better than the knight version. However, just because Bobby Fischer could play it doesn't mean I could play it. So for me personally, for peace of mind, I actually find it more comfortable to play the knight version, just prevent the queen from coming down. Anyway, that only happens if black accepts the gambit, and here black did not accept the gambit. Here, if the queen comes down, it's actually not that good. I can just push my pawn, and the attack stops. And black effectively loses two moves. They bring out their queen, they put it back. Okay, I guess net they only lose one move because I also wasted a move pushing this pawn. So on balance, they only lost one move, but still, it causes them to waste time in the opening when moves are at a premium, when you want to be bringing out your pieces quickly to the center. So instead of developing the knight, I invite the queen to come by moving the bishop. The queen comes down. So clearly, this person remembers that there's this idea in the King's Gambit, but maybe hasn't played it for a while. And so they come out and with their queen, and then I push the pawn. The queen has to go back, and now I develop my knight. Next, they prepare clearly for the bishop to come here and pin my knight. So I move it, and also here, as you can see, it's attacking the f pawn and threatening to fork the queen and rook. So black moves the knight here, effectively protecting that pawn. I decide to create a little bit of chaos in the center. The knight captures it. That was my mistake. I didn't realize it was so easy to capture because effectively the queen can't recapture because of the pawn. So anyway, I develop another piece. The bishop comes to attack my queen, and I have to be very careful here because, well, obviously I can't capture the bishop because it's protected by the knight. And I have to be careful to not put my queen here because then it will be forked. Um, and then, so the knight coming here will fork my king and queen. You might say, yes, but this other knight protects it, and that's true, it does. So the knight comes here, forks my hypothetical queen here and my king. Knight captures, but now this knight is hanging here, and his bishop can just pick it up. So, okay, I don't lose my queen, but I do lose a knight, and that's also, I mean, it's not as bad as losing a queen, but it's also pretty bad. So instead I put my queen here, effectively reinforcing that square so he doesn't get any ideas. He decides to kick my knight away, and I say, I don't want to move my knight, but I'll trade it for your bishop. And he agrees. And a nice thing that has happened here is something that rarely happens in games where you castle kingside, but that's the fact that now this rook is bearing down on the h-file. It's nice when it happens, but it's not super common. So he captures, I capture, we trade some pawns on the king side, and then I bring my queen around to line her up with the rook, and also, of course, to hit that knight. He develops his bishop, and I check. He attacks my queen. To be honest, I'm not sure why I didn't pick up this knight to begin with at this point. I think I must have missed that that move was possible. Then he goes ahead and forks my queen and rook. If you've seen some of my Grand Prix games, you've probably noticed that I tend to take a very relaxed attitude to this queenside rook. Uh, of course, it's a rook. Of course, it's important. But I mean, usually, if you have a fast attack going, it's not super relevant. I mean, the knight ends up over there. It's not like the rook was going to get in on the action anytime soon. So, if this game goes into the end game, sure, you will regret that you lost that queenside rook. But I don't know if this game's going to go into the end game. I mean, I have a rook bearing down on the king side. My queen is out. My bishop is out. Even my knight is sort of doing something. So, if you have a good attack, the queenside rook is probably not relevant. So I get out of check. He goes ahead and collects the queenside rook, and then I prepare to increase the intensity of the attack. And so here he makes a mistake because I actually wasn't threatening checkmate. This was not checkmate. He could run here, and then I could come back here and check. But then he could run. It's bad. His king is running away, but I don't know if it's lethal yet. We can check later with the engine. I don't think it's lethal. This was unnecessary, and it actually leads to me invading with the rook, and now he's in a lot of trouble. Now it's the rook is properly joined the attack. Then he does this capture, and then I capture. He captures, and now uh, it's basically over because now he can block with the bishop, but then when I come in, now it's checkmate because the queen now cuts off that square. So basically, the way I interpret these final rook moves is that he was not thinking clearly. I think he was under pressure and he started making mistakes. And that illustrates a general principle, which is that you want to be on the attack, you want to be giving pressure, because being under pressure is a lot of cognitive load and it leads to making mistakes. And so, as much as possible, you want to pressure your opponent, you want to be on the attack. And that's an interesting difference between human chess and computer chess. Computers don't feel pressure. They can play just as well, whether they're under attack or not. But humans, we definitely have this emotional part of our brain that kicks in if we feel like we're under attack. So always try to have the initiative. Always try to pressure your opponent so that they're the ones who make mistakes and not you.